Well, Franchesca Ramsey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, you do everything, and I am so excited to learn from you today.
Oh, thanks.
Just you're a host, you're an activist, you're an author, an actress, a writer. What don't you do, honestly?
I currently only speak one language. I was doing Duolingo for like a week.
Which language?
I was trying to do Spanish.
Okay, cool.
And then I just got like every time that would come up on my phone, I'd be like, oh, I have other stuff going on.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I want to try and be better at. But yeah, there's lots of stuff that I don't do. I've always been someone who's really creative and just always wanted to explore lots of things.
That's incredible. And so did you grow up in New York? You mentioned you're from...
No, I'm from South Florida.
Okay.
I moved to New York in 2009, and I stayed in New York for 11 years before moving to LA.
And out of all of the careers that you've had and currently do, where did you get your beginning?
So I went to performing arts middle and high school, and my school had like acting, theater, music, creative writing, visual arts, and I got in for visual arts and for acting, but I really wanted to study acting. And we have a number of famous alumni. Eric Andre is probably like our biggest one. He was a year older than me.
I saw him at Erewhon once.
From
afar, I don't know him.
And Eric was actually in the music program. He played
cool.
upright bass. So yeah, I always knew that I was creative, but I still really loved art. So I did like a art minor, I guess. So I took like visual arts classes. And then I went to acting school and left acting school and studied graphic design. So that's what my degree is in. And I feel like my work as a producer lets me combine my artistic talents in like the visual, but then also in like writing.
So out of school, you started a YouTube channel?
I was still in school when I started my
Okay.
YouTube channel. So I started doing YouTube the year after it was founded. So 2006 is when I started my YouTube channel, and I was in school for graphic design. And it's so funny because at the time, everyone was like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
It was a totally different landscape than now. Like, people were like, what is the point? You don't make any money. It was genuinely just a hobby. But I missed acting. I missed performing. And so that was an outlet for me. It was like making sketches in my spare time.
It's amazing to watch like your journey throughout, because I love the content that you create now.
Thanks.
And I can't remember exactly how I found you, but I started watching or it started popping up in my feed a lot more during the writer strike and the actor strike.
Yeah.
And I learned so much about all of it from you. And so I feel like you have a really unique talent to take something that's current, something that's happening, and turn it into something that's both educational and hilarious.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it's funny thank you for saying that. I really did kind of discover that as my superpower.
Yeah.
I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do. I went to acting school with a very traditional mindset of like, I'm going to be an actor. And then when I started writing and creating sketches and eventually went viral, I got my first agent and they signed me as a writer. And I was genuinely like, me? I'm not a writer. And they was like, but you are. Like, you're writing these things. And what I realized that I was good at and I found creatively stimulating is taking big ideas, taking trending stories, taking concepts that are maybe confusing or misunderstood and finding ways to talk about them that's digestible and funny and accessible. Because you know, our world is confusing and overwhelming, and I think oftentimes people feel disillusioned by the prospect of like, how do I understand all this stuff? So I like that I get to put my own spin on it and help.
It's so cool too, because I think sometimes, well, I grew up in the Midwest, and I think that there are certain things where if you grow up a certain way in a certain environment around people who look like you and think like you and all these things, you end up thinking that's what's normal. That's the way life is. And so being able to have something like YouTube and be able to see all these other opinions and things that we've never been exposed to is a really cool way to just learn more and be entertained in the process.
Yeah, I agree. I often say you don't know what you don't know. And I think oftentimes when we have important conversations, people feel nervous or embarrassed to admit that they don't know things. And I really try to come from a perspective of there are things that I don't know. I'm not an authority. I get things wrong. Like, we all have to come from a place of willingness to learn and a thirst for knowledge and curiosity about the world and about each other. And so I'm glad that I'm able to contribute in some small way.
It's more than small. You've done some really, really cool things.
Thanks.
Tell me about your first viral video.
So the viral video that I'm most known for is called Shit White Girls Say to Black Girls. That went viral in 2012. I had some smaller viral hits before that. My biggest one before that was my student loan countdown, which was like a parody of Beyonce's Countdown.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And I thought I had like hit it big.
Yeah.
Like I did a bunch of press, like MTV wrote an article about me, and I did some like local news, and I was like, I did it. And then when Shit White Girls Say went viral, it got about 1.5 million views in the first day. And you know, here's the thing. On TikTok now, like 1 million views is kind of like, whatever, that happens all the time. But in 2012, like, it was news, you know. It got 12 million views by like the first week, I think. So I did Anderson Cooper, I was on CNN, MTV did a whole like hour-long special. I got invited to audition for SNL, like MSNBC. Like, it was just like this giant story. And then I got my agent, and I was being invited to speak at colleges, and I'd been working as a graphic designer at the time. And all of the opportunities that were coming in, I was like, I can't pursue a day job and explore these things. Yeah. So, and I was pretty broken up about it because I liked my job.
For sure.
I enjoyed my job. I was a designer at Ann Taylor, a graphic designer at Ann Taylor. Cool. And I was like, oh, I have to give up my discount.
It's a big deal.
And people sleep on Ann Taylor. Yeah. Listen, y'all, they are size inclusive. They are very friendly, budget friendly. I have a big foot, and they carry a size 11 shoe. And I was like, I spent my discount.
Yes.
So I was like, I can't believe I'm going to do this. But I quit my job, and I never went back. And I just kind of like dove headfirst into being a content creator, but also pursuing acting and writing full time.
Wow. With your creative process, with something like that, did you have like a very specific set of things that you researched, or was this just something that was inspired?
So there was a viral series the year before called Shit Girls Say, where this comedian, male comedian, was dressing up as a girl and kind of going through like stereotypical things that girls say. And it became this huge meme. And there was Shit Black Girls Say, and there was Shit Mom Say, and Shit Dad Say. And it was this huge thing. And so I knew I wanted to do a parody, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so that was 2011. And so I went home for Christmas. And while I was home at a Christmas party, I was with my friends. And as the night went on and people were getting drunker, people started saying like things that were kind of crossing the boundaries for me. And I was like, wait a second, maybe this is the video.
Yeah.
So I was like, but shit, white girls say, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, people aren't going to get it. And shout out to my ex-husband, who normally I would not be giving him props for anything. Yes. But he was the one that was like, maybe it's shit white girls say to black girls. And we had an argument about it. I was like, that's not the meme. The format is shit girls say. Yeah. And he was like, well, what if it's different? And I was like, maybe, I don't know. The more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, maybe it is that. And I did it, and it blew up. And then suddenly people were doing shit girls say to gay guys, shit moms say to, you know, their oldest child, shit bubble, and just like formatted the meme differently. So I had a list of ideas and quotes from that night at that Christmas party. And then when it came time to like edit it, I just went through and picked the funniest moments. I enlisted the help of a friend to shoot it, and we went around Brooklyn shooting it different places. And the rest is history. It's funny because that style has kind of become the norm, like the quick cuts of someone just doing a bunch of like reactions to things is kind of the norm, like front-facing phone videos. But it definitely was not the norm in 2012.
I was watching it and I thought you were a decade early to this trend.
Oh yeah, like it's so interesting. Like I feel so old when I say these things, so please like take it with a grain of salt. But I've been on the internet a long time and I've watched so many trends come and go, and it is really interesting that when I was making videos in 2006, my classmates, my teachers, they genuinely were like, what are you doing? When I went viral in 2012, no one I worked with knew I made content. I didn't tell anyone. They were all so confused. My coworkers were like, I saw you on Anderson Cooper. And I was like, oh yeah, I had a viral video. Like they were like, what are you talking about? No one understood what it meant. And even when, I will never forget, I made $45,000 off that video.
Wow.
And I got a check and I took it to the bank. And the bank teller was like, first of all, that person could have lost their job. They were like, what is this money? Why is Google paying you $45,000? And I was like, well, I made this video. And the bank teller was like, what are you talking about? I took out my phone and like all the bank tellers came and like watched the video in the bank. And they were like, you made money off of this? The landscape and the understanding of social media was so different. And now people are saying, yeah, I want to be an influencer. That's what I want to do. You know that you can make money. And that's what people are going into creating content for. So it's just interesting. Like the landscape is so different today.
Do you feel like you knew that it was going to be something, or did you just enjoy it?
No, I had no idea. I just enjoyed it. I mean, I had a regular job. I started making content in 2006. I didn't quit my day job till 2012. Like I had a job that whole time. Even to this day, I still feel like, I'm glad that I can make money off of this, but it's not my main source of income. Yeah. I don't call myself an influencer. It's not what I set out to do. I always wanted to work in film and TV. That's always been my goal, and I'm thankful I'm able to do it. And I'm thankful that social media has been a supplement for me, because when the strike happened, for example, like I was able to make money from TikTok. I was able to do these podcasts. I was able to still work. I was able to do public speaking. A lot of that stuff came because of my social media presence.
That's incredible. So would you say you're writing from YouTube? Did that help you get jobs in TV?
Yeah, so that's how I got my agent, was because of Shit White Girls Say. And like I said, they signed me 360, meaning they signed me in all areas. So public speaking, writing, acting, producing. But for me, I really was like, I'm an actor. And my agent at the time, who I'm not with anymore, he was really the one that encouraged me to like continue pursuing writing. So that's like my main focus these days. I still audition, just I don't really book that often. So you know, if you're listening and you would like to hire me,
She's ready.
I'm ready. But yeah, most of my work is as a writer, producer, and now as a host. I've done a lot of hosting, and I think social media helped with that because people know me as a personality. And so it's funny when I do get to act, my audience is like, I forget you're an actor. I'm like, oh yeah, because you just know my personality. Right. Versus someone who comes up as an actor and, you know, they're on the street and people are like, oh, you're so-and-so from that show. Like, that's not my experience. People know me as Franchesca.
It's pretty cool though.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's not what I ever would have imagined.
Yeah.
I often think like, man, high school Franchesca had no idea. And the thing I often tell young people, because I speak at schools a lot, is, maybe the thing that you're supposed to be doing hasn't been invented yet. Like when I was in college, there was no YouTube. You know, do the math. There was no social media. So like I didn't know. Like I had no idea. And even when I was in college doing YouTube, I wasn't being taught how to think about social media and marketing and branding in that way, because nobody knew that it was going to become a profitable career. Even TikTok, right? Like that's only blown up in the last few years. The thing you're supposed to be doing, maybe the company hasn't gotten off the ground yet, or the person you're supposed to work with is toiling away on that idea and they have you in mind and you guys just haven't crossed paths yet, you know? And like thinking about your journey in that way, for me at least, has like kind of relieved some of the pressure that I put on myself to like achieve all the things, you know.
It is amazing that we have all these tools to kind of create whatever we want. So Dennis and I have a fitness business, and we started 10-ish years ago when Instagram wasn't really a thing for fitness or anything like that. And people were so confused about the idea of online fitness. And we just kind of went for it. And sometimes you just have to follow that gut instinct and things can happen.
Yeah, it's so true. The idea of being your own cheerleader is something that I think a lot of people shy away from because they don't want to seem like boastful, right? Or you don't want to tip into being, you know, like too high on your own supply. You know what I mean? Like too overconfident, too, you know, those things. But at the same time, like, if you're not on your team, how do you expect anybody else to be on your team? So like you have to be the person that's like, I have a really good idea. I really believe in this thing. I'm really excited about it. You got to try this. Check this out. Let's work together. Otherwise, you're never going to take that leap, and putting yourself out there and connecting with people is the way that things turn from ideas into businesses and, you know, develop into bigger and better.
So you worked on The Nightly Show.
I did.
And MTV's Decoded.
Yeah.
I have loved watching these segments.
Oh, thanks.
They're really, really cool.
Thank you.
What is your writing process for something like that, where it's humor, but it's something educational?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go about writing those?
So I always start from like an outline. So I jot down a bunch of notes and I kind of come up with like, what's the thesis? What's the thing that I want people to understand? So with Decoded, you know, we would pitch ideas to each, me and my producers would kind of come up with a bunch of ideas, topics that we wanted to tackle. And it was often things that were like going viral at the time, or like we had tentpole things, meaning holidays or breaking down like the etymology of words was a thing that we did a lot on the show. So that was kind of like a rotating segment that we would have on the show. And then I would like outline and say like, here's the beginning, middle, and end of this idea. And then I usually like, I don't do jokes first. I do like information first. And then I go back and do what I call like a joke pass. So I look for places that I think jokes can fit. And with Decoded, we did a lot of pop culture stuff. So oftentimes we would use celebrities or trending news stories in order to help make connections with things. And I love analogies. So I love using pop culture, but I also love using different words or personal stories because I think that helps make the connection for people. And then at Nightly Show, the process was different because I was in a writer's room. And so we would actually have to pitch. So you would come in the morning, we would have a meeting. And usually there would be an email that would go out the night before with like news stories. We had like a research team and they would say, cool, this happened yesterday, or we know this is coming up, right? The primaries are coming up and here's who's running, or the Iowa caucus is happening. And then there would be like a little blurb about it and maybe some links. Sometimes you'd get assignments where Larry or our showrunner, Rory, would say, like, we really want to do something about this story. And then your job would be to come up with some angles and then pitch it. And then either get assigned or you would go off and you would write it. And then you would have to, you know, bang something out in 2 hours.
I was going to say, what is the timeline? So you're getting an email in the evening.
In the evening. Oh, my God. Listen, after working on that show, I learned so much because it was my first writing job.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I really realized is I don't want to work in late night.
I'm a morning person.
Well, you know, it's not even that I'm a morning person per se, but like the turnaround on work is so fast.
Yeah.
We were doing a show 4 nights a week. And so it was just, and sometimes you would work on the show and then this was, you know, 2016, Donald Trump, he would say something and then you'd have to scrap the show because you'd be like, well, now we have to talk about this thing that happened because, you know, whatever he said. And like the pace was really, really tough.
Yeah.
And I often think about the fact that, you know, Sam B came from The Daily Show and John Oliver came from The Daily Show, and their shows are 1 night a week. And I often thought, they probably went to the 1 night a week because they were like, I don't want to do 5 nights. It
sounds like a grind.
It's a grind. It's so hard. Yeah. And really one of the things that I learned from that show that I was doing Decoded at the same time, but we started to incorporate, and I've done since, is just doing more evergreen content. It's hard to keep up with what happened today, and then it also becomes old really fast, and it doesn't have rewatchability. So I stopped doing Decoded in 2020, but our Thanksgiving episode goes viral every year because it's a Thanksgiving episode. You know, we have a Cinco de Mayo episode. We talk about Halloween costumes. We have episodes that can be shared over and over again versus an episode that's about this one news story that happened that week. People aren't going to talk about it a year later, even 2 weeks later. It's going to be old news, and everybody's talking about the thing. So doing evergreen content was like a big thing that I learned from that job.
Wow. That sounds really hard, but I can imagine that kind of sprint environment, you just absorb things so much quicker.
Yeah, I mean, it's a muscle, and I would say, you know, whether you are an actor or a musician or a writer, whatever it is that you're doing, a visual artist, you have to work the muscle of that talent and that skill, and it just takes practice. Like, I remember when I started at Nightly Show, I was really overwhelmed. I'd never been in a writer's room before. We were using a program that it was called Scripto, totally different than what you like actually write scripts with. And like, no one taught me how to use it. Like, I just got a computer and they were like, go.
Yeah.
I was like, what am I doing? But you know, after a minute, like, you start figuring it out. It's very much like a sink or swim environment. And similarly to you, like starting a business, right? You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I guess I'm going to figure this out.
For sure.
You make mistakes. This doesn't work. Then one thing hits and you're like, oh, cool. I'm going to keep doing that. And I think that applies to like a lot of creative pursuits.
So you show up on your first day at the Nightly Show.
Yes.
What are you thinking?
Oh my God. I was so overwhelmed. I mean, I was really excited because I knew it was a big deal, but I don't think I was prepared for how much work it would be because I wasn't just a writer, I was also a contributor, so I was on camera. And so I wasn't on camera every night, but I would be on like 2 or 3 times a week usually. And it was hard. I honestly, like, I was really insecure. It was hard being on TV. Just for like my own body image and like mental health. I was really like stressed about like looking perfect and like, and so I really put a lot of pressure on myself. But I think what I learned is that I'm really resilient through that job. And I was really thankful for Larry. He did such a great job of like talking to us and affirming us and affirming like, you deserve to be here and you're doing a really good job. And I didn't realize at the time how rare that is. Like, so often you show up to set, you do the job, and you just leave. Like, no one says, like, hey, really good job today.
Right.
You're just like, I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
And you're like waiting to see yourself on TV. You're like, well, shit, nobody told me that I had like a booger in my nose, you know? Like, but I was so thankful that when I was on Nightly Show, like at the end of every taping, Larry would be like, come to my office. Let's all talk about what worked on the show and what didn't. You know, how'd you feel about the round table or whatever? And so that gave me a lot of confidence that I really needed. And I'm somebody that really thrives on positive reinforcement. And so kind of the full circle moment of like being your own cheerleader, realizing that like you're not always going to get that at every job. So you kind of have to start doing it for yourself and be like, yo, I killed that today. Like,
for sure.
I did a really great job, you know, like I didn't book the job, but I did a great audition. Like,
yes.
You kind of have to give yourself that positive feedback.
And developing that system for what that looks like, knowing first of all that you have to figure out something if you're not getting it from other people, like figuring out a system to do it yourself. Because there are times where in videos I'm like, I'm so sick of hearing my voice. I don't want to watch this back, but it is helpful.
Yeah, it's true. I definitely am somebody when I create content, at least, like I will watch that shit over and over again. I'm like, I was hilarious. I was like,
and you were.
I mean, and it's taken me time to get there. Like when I first started, and I will say like, this is one thing I find really interesting about where we are with social media is today people really value like more off the cuff, like less produced. Like people laying in bed with their bonnet on, or they're in the car and they're like, hey, I'm about to go into work, but I'm going to tell you this thing and I'm going to go. Versus when I was creating content, it was like green screen and lights and backdrop and like lots of editing and really like, hey guys, well, like really like presentational style and like perfection. And so I used to like be really looking at every minute of my content and doing takes and takes, like shooting so much content just for a 5-minute video. And now I'm like, whatever, like I say it, I maybe do it 1 or 2 times and I like forget about it and then I'm done. And I kind of love that that's the place that we're in. People seem to really value that authentic voice versus like, I really worked so hard to make this quote unquote perfect. So yeah, that's helped me in my process for sure.
How did you transition from having so many years of kind of curating that professional look into a more off the cuff?
It's just kind of happened over time. I joined TikTok late, like when it was blowing up during the pandemic. I really dug my heels in. I regret it, but I was like, I don't want to join another platform. I don't want to learn another thing. And I didn't get it. And I just resisted it. And then when I started playing with it, what I really liked was the functionality of TikTok, being able to edit all of your content right there. Like I was so used to filming on a camera and then uploading my content to my, downloading it onto my computer and then putting it into Premiere and then editing it and then rendering it and waiting for it to export and then uploading it to YouTube. So to be on your phone and film and then edit and then post it immediately, I was like, this is wild.
So wild.
I was like, this is nuts. I genuinely could not believe like how fast it was and that the quality is good. Back in my day, you had to hang a green screen and you had to light the green screen because if there was a shadow on the green screen, it wasn't going to chroma key out. And now you can just push a filter. I mean, it's incredible. I feel like a boomer saying it, but like it blows my mind to this day. And I think about the fact that like I would spend hours, or I would film something and I would forget to turn my mic on. And then I would put the footage in my computer and I'm like, oh my God, this is all silent because I didn't turn the freaking mic on. So like
it's the worst.
The learning curve of technology at that time, the gatekeepers have kind of been like pulled away. You don't need to buy a DSLR camera. You don't need to buy a Rode mic. You don't need any of that stuff now. You just need your phone, and it's a blessing and a curse. I do think there are some people where I'm like, this is not your calling. There are other things you could do.
Plenty of other things.
But at the same time, I think it's really cool that there are people who don't have the funds to move to LA. They can't move to New York. They don't know how to get an agent. They have no connections to entertainment, and it doesn't matter. They can still create content on their phone and reach so many people. And I think, again, for all of the critiques of TikTok, I love that it's kind of democratized the process. Like you don't need 1 million followers in order to go viral. Like if you have something really funny and smart to say and people like it and engage with it, the algorithm will pick it up and you can go from 0 to 10,000, 100,000 tomorrow. And I think that's really cool.
It for sure is, because the algorithms are at play and trying to figure out how to, especially if you're like trying to teach something.
Yeah.
That's something that can be challenging for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not easy, but what I like about it is I like the challenge. And I feel like that kind of speaks to my background as a graphic designer, because graphic design is kind of about problem solving. You've got a brand and they have an event, or you need to get visibility on a new product, and your job as the designer is like, how do I come up with a piece of content or an image or a logo that lets people know what this is, where to find it, those type of things. Like I always like that part of it. I'm such a problem solver. And so I look at creating content the same way. Like I'm always looking at what other people are doing. I'm trying different things. I'm trying different times. I'm trying different formats. I'm trying different hooks. I'm trying different editing things. And for me, it's kind of like, ooh, that thing worked. I'm like a mad scientist.
Yes. You have kind of those two pieces of the brain where it's like you love that problem solving element, looking at the data, but you also have this incredible artistic ability.
Yeah.
Speaking of which,
Okay.
your apartment, the rage.
The apartment that has like made people upset.
Oh my gosh. The song, I'm blanking on the first part of the song.
I'm not getting my deposit back. I'm not
Getting my deposit back.
And I'm totally okay with that.
Incredible.
And a lot of people are not okay with that.
If you haven't seen this video yet, you need to go watch it on her Instagram. It's probably on TikTok too.
Yeah, it's on Instagram and on TikTok. I think it has like 14 million views on Instagram, which is bonkers to me. This is another thing. I have found that if something does really well on my TikTok, it bombs on Instagram. But if it does really well on Instagram, it bombs on TikTok.
Huh.
So that one did okay on both. It did 1 million on TikTok or 2 on TikTok, but it did 14 on Instagram. And I had never had something do 14 million on Instagram. So yeah, it was interesting because, and again, to the concept of like playing with different formats, I had a lot of apartment content do well.
Yeah.
And I had started making these songs and the songs were doing well. And so I was like, what if I put the song and the apartment together? And that's how it blew up. So yeah, I think it was a combination of people love time lapse. I have all this great footage of me painting my apartment. The payoff of time lapse is fun because you're like, I know this is going somewhere, so I want to see what it looks like when it's done. I think the song aspect of it, I really didn't anticipate it, but people have used the song to paint their apartments or show things that they've done. So it kind of has like the meme quality of it where everybody can contribute, which is really interesting, kind of like akin to Shit White Girls Say, where it's like, oh, I see the format, now I'm going to do my version on it. So yeah, again, it just kind of combines all the things that I'm really interested in into a 1-minute video that got people very upset.
It's brilliant. So for people who haven't seen it, they're going to watch it after this,
Yes,
but can you
please
describe what it was?
Yeah, so I moved into my apartment at the height of the pandemic, and as part of my process to like get through being alone and trying to stay safe and feeling like I just wanted to make my space my own, I painted every wall of my apartment with like these really colorful murals. I joke that my apartment's a selfie emporium because like every wall is like a great backdrop for selfies.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I've got every color of the rainbow represented. And so, yeah, I painted and I time-lapsed all of it. And I had been posting these videos on TikTok for the past 2 years. So it's so funny to me that people got upset when this one blew up because I was like, this apartment's been painted this whole time.
Right.
I didn't just do this. And so I think it's a combination of, I think a lot of times people use the internet as a place to like dump whatever they're going through. And so it has less to do with me, but I think especially like landlords that were upset, that were like, I have an investment property and I put so much time into it, and if somebody did this to me, I'm like, whoa, you're projecting, because I'm renting from a corporation. Like,
yes,
I'm not renting from like a little grandma. I'm allowed to paint. My lease says I'm allowed to paint. I've just accepted that I'm probably not getting my deposit back because I don't anticipate I'm going to paint it back. But I'm also not leaving anytime soon.
Right.
But also, like, you know, I think why people, for all the people who were upset about it, I think people related to it because the housing market is in a really shitty spot right now. Yeah. And a lot of people are renting that would love to buy. I would love to buy. That was my plan. But I can't see myself buying $1 million 1-bedroom house. And a $1 million house that like is not even in great shape.
Yes.
Like still needs,
it's wild.
I mean, it's bad. It's really bad. So crazy. I'm like, you know what? I love my apartment and I'm very comfortable there. I'm very fortunate, but I want my apartment to reflect my personality and my style, and I want it to be my home. I don't want to just be like, well, I'm renting, so I'm never going to paint anything, and I'm allowed to paint.
Yes.
So that's what I did.
Well, you did such a great job of making your point to people who were trolling you so hard.
Listen, I have learned over the course of my career, the magic, the secret sauce, so to speak, is like, you're gonna do things that piss people off. Like, yes, people didn't like it, or some people loved it, some people hated it, but like the conversation it started is partly why it went viral. People were sharing it because they were like, can you believe she painted her apartment? And then some people were sharing it like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
You know, you're never gonna have one general consensus. Everyone's not gonna love everything. And letting go of the need of like, every single person needs to like me. Like, the theorizing about my apartment, I was like, my landlord loves the apartment. He thinks it's cool. They're like, when the maintenance guy sees this, you're in trouble. I'm like, the maintenance guy is taking pictures. Like, what are you talking about? You know, like, y'all are theorizing, and that TikTok paid my rent that month. So
That's
like,
amazing.
Okay, run them up. I was like, let's do more.
Yes.
I was like, what else can I paint?
Exactly. I mean, some of your responses were just like, are you paying my rent? Why do you care about my money?
The
like
amount of people that were like, your deposit's not going to cover this. And I said, how much was my deposit?
Yes.
You don't know. Well, and then what was so funny is I got so many people asking for a walkthrough. So I did a walkthrough of my apartment, and I shared that my rent is $3,425 because I live in a luxury building. And there were so many people that were like, holy shit, your rent is so high. And I was like, yeah, you guys were theorizing that my deposit wasn't going to cover this. It will.
Yeah.
I promise you it will cover it. But yeah, it's just so interesting. I realize again that like some people are using the internet as a place to like vent, and it oftentimes has nothing to do with me. Like, someone who's really happy in their personal life is not going to leave a novel length comment on an Instagram post of a stranger, or like send me 10 paragraphs about how hard they work to buy a rental property. Like, girl, get a journal.
Yeah, that's not the place.
No,
to share.
but again, it's also the realization of like, oh, this is not about me. This is about whatever. You must have had a bad tenant. Or, I believe that there are people who are damaging apartments and leaving them in a state that is, costing whoever owns the property a lot of money. That does happen. That is not what's happening here. Mm-hmm. And the people that were getting that like visceral reaction were projecting their personal experience that has nothing to do with me. So it's easy to let that go.
Did that kind of thick skin come from just having bombardments of people, or have you always been that way?
No. Oh God, no. I'm a huge softie. I'm still a huge softie. Yeah. And I think honestly, that's a big part of why I'm good at creating, is because I'm really empathetic. I really try to see from other people's perspectives. I feel very, very deeply. Like, I can't even watch like horror movies. Like, I see someone get hurt and I feel like, I feel like my leg is broken. I feel like it's happening to me. And so early in my career, it was really hard, especially when Shit White Girls Say went viral. I mean, I think, again, a blessing and a curse was I was in those comments. Like, I was fighting for my life. I was arguing with people back and forth because I really hate being misunderstood. I don't like it when someone says, like, you think this or you're blah, blah, blah. And that was really hard for me. And so it took time for me to get to a place to really understand that, like, again, the type of person who commits to making up stories about people or arguing all day. I mean, I think Shit White Girls Say has something like 80,000 comments, and I still make like $300 a month from that video because so many people still watch it.
Wow.
People are arguing for years in those comments, and I'm like, do you have a family? Like, what's going on? Right? Like, let's talk about it, because sometimes, every once in a while, like, I'll go back and forth with somebody,
sure.
And then I'm like, I have things to do. Like, I'm on a deadline. Like, I have to finish. Like, I have an app on my computer called Self-Control where you can block programs for like a certain amount of time. Smart. I'll put that bad boy on because I'm like, I cannot go back and forth with y'all. I have things to do.
We have to be productive.
Right. But then I remember, especially like with the pandemic, a lot of people are lonely.
Yeah.
A lot of people have lost friends and family or lost their jobs or are struggling, and they're using the internet as a place to like work through that. And so that's just something that I've I've come to that realization over time. But early in my career, like I took it really, really personally, and building a community offline and a community of people who are also creators, that's helped shape my perspective too. Because other people that I know are like, oh, girl, people say random shit in my comments. I'm like, oh, it's not just me.
For sure.
It's not just me.
And people, I don't know what it is. Do you think it is the loneliness or is it because there's this screen in between us, they feel like they have the entitlement?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. I think people just forget that there's a real person on the other side of the screen. And I think more often than not, I made the mistake at one point in my career of like meeting face to face with someone that had like said a lot of really nasty things about me. We were both at a conference together, and I was just like, knew he was there, and I was like, I want to meet this guy.
Yeah.
And it was really eye-opening because I was like, wow, you are such a different person in person. Like the internet is a place where you kind of get to like create this persona for you. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of wrestling. You know when you watch wrestling, like they're doing all these like big performances for the audience, and they're all like puffing their chest up and they're doing all this stuff, and it's like not real. That's what it's like.
100%.
People get on the internet and they're like, and they see the crowd is around them, right? And they're like, I'm going to talk shit about this person, and like, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. And like the crowd's like, ah. Yes. But if the crowd wasn't there, they wouldn't have that level of bravado, right? It's like the performance that they're doing. If it's just you and I one-on-one, and especially if you can like hear my tone of voice and see my body language. And when I sat down with this guy, I'll never forget. He had talked so much shit about me, said horribly racist, awful things about me. And then he was like, you're actually kind of funny. And I was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, yeah, I am funny. But it was that thing of like, you have created a version of me in your head that fulfills your preconceived notions about who I am and what I believe, but you don't know me. You know this like very condensed version of me from the internet. But now if you meet me in person, it doesn't mean we're going to be friends. It doesn't mean we're going to see everything the same, but you might realize like, oh, this is not the person I thought they were. I'm fighting a battle with this person that I've invented. And I think a lot of people have done that.
Yeah.
They decide like, oh, this influencer, she has this much money and she's like this, and her parents must be like this, and she lives in a big house, and she da 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 da. You don't know anything about that girl. She has that outfit on credit.
Yes.
She has run up her credit card. She don't talk to her parents anymore. Like you don't know. You've just decided that they're this thing because you're really feeling unhappy in other places. And that person is serving as like a mirror for you to say like they have what I don't, or, you know, they think they're better than me, or whatever it is. And as shitty as it is, like I have a level of empathy for that. Because like those are people that are hurting essentially. And that's why they're doing it. Happy people don't do shit like that.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. Do you think that kind of empathy towards people like that and just things that are happening in the world, does that kind of fuel your writing in a sense? Does it help give you ideas for what to create about?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I really try to do in my work is I really want people to feel seen.
Yeah.
And I want people to feel as if they can do whatever it is that they want to do in life, and they can live the kind of life that they deserve and that they are striving towards. And so that's why I talk about social justice issues. That's why I try to share parts of my journey, like the hard stuff and the things that I've learned and the mistakes that I've made, because I hope people can take something away from that and inspire them. So I definitely think that empathy is kind of the secret sauce. And especially like when you're telling stories, being able to really connect to the why of why people do things.
Yeah.
You know, even when people do the wrong thing, there's a why. And like thinking about what that is and getting to that grain of truth makes people empathetic and makes people invested. You know, you watch Walter White in Breaking Bad, like this is a terrible person.
Yeah.
But when you know the why of like what got him there, and you know like where he started from, and you can see grains of like, oh man, well I might have done that, or it makes sense, you know, and you see the fight and you know like, well, the fight is really about this, and this, and this. Like that it requires empathy and investment. And that's the stuff that I think is really fun and exciting, especially when you can expand people's worldview and just make them think about things differently. That's exciting to me.
It really is. I mean, just the concept of seeking to understand someone else's perspective. Like you said, even if you don't agree,
Right.
at least maybe you can understand that backstory or see, okay, I understand why they would believe that. I don't think that's true.
Yeah,
And it's okay to have some differences.
I think that's important. And again, like, that's not to say that that applies to everything.
Sure, of
right?
course.
Like, there are some people where you're like, I don't want to understand, you are a bad person,
Yes.
whatever. But I think oftentimes if you really want to come to a place of like solving problems and helping expand people's understandings of things, you need to know where that thought came from, so that you can either dispel that information, or you can potentially like keep people from going down that path elsewhere, where you're like, oh, okay, well, you started thinking this about, relationships because you had this bad experience. Well, maybe we need to arm people so that they feel like they can advocate for themselves in relationships. So that bad relationship doesn't turn into, now I think all women are like this, I think all men are like this. It's like, okay, well, where did that come from?
Yeah.
So I know it's hard, but again, I think it's just speaks to my personality. Like, I'm just somebody who has such a thirst for knowledge. I'm always like, where did that come from? Like, I just want to know more.
For sure. I remember one of the things that you posted one time. It was, I don't know if it was a real conversation or if it was, this is an example of a conversation of a friend who hasn't responded to multiple texts.
Yeah, it was a fake conversation, but it was inspired by a real conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible. Just how you would go about communicating with this friend that you cared about them, how you set the boundaries. I thought that was really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I have really found, and this has been something that I've developed later in life, but I've started to kind of like err on the side of over communicating if I have conflict with someone, because I just find too often when things are left unsaid, I've had situations where I'm like, oh my God, if we had just talked about this to begin with, like we wouldn't have gone down this path.
Right.
And honestly, it was like one of the biggest lessons from my divorce, where like that relationship needed to end, and it was hard. It was the right thing to do. But like through our divorce, I realized like, oh man, there were so many moments where like you weren't telling me how you felt and I wasn't telling you how I felt. And sometimes it was out of fear of like how you would be perceived or how the other person would respond or what they might think. And you start like building this whole narrative instead of giving the other person a chance to like tell you how they really feel or like receive it. And so after I got divorced, I was like, I'm never doing that again. I was like, I'm just going to tell you. Like, you either love it or you hate it, but I'm going to tell you. And it really has been such a game changer in my professional relationships, my friendships, my romantic partnerships, to just say, like, here's how I'm feeling. And the voice note thing really came from the fact that, like, text communication is just... so much gets misinterpreted, and I would always rather send a voice note. And I always start my voice notes by, hey, I'm sending you a voice note, because text usually gets misinterpreted, and I don't want that to happen here. That's how I start every single one when it's like a serious thing, just to kind of like bring the temperature down.
Absolutely.
Because you will start reading the text however, if something is in your mind, you'll read it as like angry or sarcastic or demeaning or whatever it is. And then you hear the voice and they're like, no, girl, I thought we were going to Benihana. What's going on? And then you're like, oh my God, I thought she was like that.
Yes.
It's not that at all.
For sure.
So yeah, I got a lot of people asking me for advice on those things. And I had shared a similar voice note when I decided that I wasn't going to pursue a romantic relationship with someone who had been like flaky on me. And that went viral. And I was like, oh, again, like learning from that, I was like, oh, maybe I'll do another one of these.
Yeah.
And I had gotten a lot of messages about friendship and like maintaining friendships or cultivating friendships as you get older. And so I was like, oh, maybe this will be a good example. And it happens, right? Where there's ebbs and flows in friendships, and it's okay to say to your friend, like, hey, I kind of need a little more attention. I feel like I'm reaching out all the time and you're not, or I've been there hyping you up or listening to you vent, but you haven't been doing the same thing for me. And a lot of times I think you'd be surprised how your friends will respond. They'll be like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was doing that. Cool, let's fix it. But if you don't give them the chance to do that, then I mean, I'd rather be honest and fix it than like not be honest and like hurt the friendship.
We can't know what other people are thinking unless if we ask.
You have no idea. And like my best friend and I have been saying this, so I'm going to give this to you and hope your audience uses it too, is we've been saying, don't knit a sweater. So something happens to you, you don't text me back. And then I start knitting a sweater. She's doing this, she's doing that. She's hanging out with this person, and I know, and she didn't do da-da-da. Don't knit the sweater.
Yeah.
Ask, hey girl, you didn't text me back. Is everything okay? Like, the last few times I've texted you, I didn't hear from you for days, blah, blah, blah. Then your friend's like, yeah, sorry, I lost my job. You didn't know.
For sure.
You knit a whole sweater, cashmere, 32 thread, you know what I mean? Ombre, a whole shelf, whatever. It is like you just made up a whole thing that's not real. And we do this all of the time. And it's unfair to ourselves, and it's unfair to the people that we care about, the people that we're in community with. So don't knit the sweater, but use the phrase.
Yes. I love that. That's a beautiful analogy. You are the queen of analogies.
I have to shout out to Delon, my work husband, because he and I do this a lot. We're so close where like sometimes I'm like, did you come up with this and I stole it from you? Or did we come up with this together? But like he and I have been saying this for like a year now. And I'm like, when this goes into like the cultural consciousness, I'm going to be like, that was us.
You do it together. And he's your co-host on Let Me Fix It.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
He seems incredible.
Yeah,
your episodes are so funny. You're John Travolta.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we started this podcast last year, and we have been friends for 20 years. We went to college together. We were in acting school together. And we were just excited to do something that felt, again, constructive and speaks to all of our creative interests. He's also an actor and a writer and a photographer. And so the whole concept of our show is we look at things from the past and then we go, how can we fix this? How would we reboot this thing for today? How would we revamp this brand? How would we help this celebrity have like a second act of their career? And it's really fun. It's like snarky, of course, but I like the fact that we kind of add like a positive spin on it by pitching these fixes.
And it's so funny.
Oh,
do you have any favorite episodes that you've made so far?
Ooh, well, we had a really great episode on Blockbuster, and we talked about like how the company could have, but they had the option to purchase Netflix and they decided not to. And then like, Blockbuster went out of business. They went bankrupt. There's only one Blockbuster left in the United States.
It's in Oregon, right?
Yes. And it was super interesting because I love that we get to just like learn so much history, and it's also kind of like a little bit of nostalgia. So my first job was at Blockbuster. So we talked about working at Blockbuster, and talked about how the business was founded, and then we get to pitch our ideas for how we would bring Blockbuster back if we had the chance to. So that one was really fun. And then we also did the girl group Dream. Do you remember them?
Yes. What was their main song?
He loves me. He loves you now.
Oh my gosh, of course.
And they're like they're doing a lot of like arm and like head stuff.
And that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of step touching. So we did them. They only had one album. They were only a girl group for like 3 years. They really came and went. And it was so funny because one of the girls from Dream actually listened to the episode and commented on Instagram. People were tagging her like, girl, you gotta listen to the episode. So it was really fun. I love that we combine nostalgia, but we also do like this deep dive. I've said it's like John Oliver meets Shark Tank.
That's really cool.
We like do one topic, evergreen,
yes,
learning my lesson from all of these different jobs, and then we unpack it. We go listen to their songs. We learned about how the group started and why the group fell apart, and like what would we do if we got them together, like what would we do next. we were like, maybe there's a children's book, or there's like a cartoon in the vein of like Powerpuff Girls. It's Dream Girls, you know, like
I love that.
It's so fun. And we were very flattered that one of the girls from the group listened to the episode and left us some really cute comments. So yeah, it's been really, really fun.
And for people, if they Google it, it's L-E.
It's Lemme, like Lemme. But the SEO, if you put "Let Me Fix It," it
still pops up.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Amazing. You've thought of everything.
Yeah, I tried.
So you also have another podcast that just started a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, with Wondery. It's called Black History for Real. And it is a historical podcast, and I'm hosting it with Conscious Lee, who's like a really big TikToker, but he's also like a cultural educator. And it's been really fun because it is historical, but it's also conversation. So it's like storytelling. Every episode, we're focusing on different Black history figures, and we're talking about their beginnings, little known facts about them. And then there's like little segments where Conscious and I are kind of like reflecting on things that we've learned in the story. And Wondery does all this really cool sound design. So we're like, you know, a car speeds up to the house and it's, you know, you hear the door slam, and like there's all of this like cool sound effects going on, like really building out the world, which is so cool. So like when I'm listening to the episode, I'm like, holy crap, I had no idea they were going to add all this stuff in.
It transports you there. It's really cool.
It's really, really cool. And I love that like we get to act as well, because we're kind of voicing some of these characters and they're putting like effects on our voices, and we're, you know, doing these scenes between he and I, like having these arguments between these people, or there's like a courtroom scene. So he's the lawyer and I'm the defendant, and it's really, really fun. So yeah, it's been a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's been a lot of work, but I'm so thankful that I've been able to kind of just continue pivoting. I did not think I'd become the podcast girl. I have another show coming out with Audible later this year.
Oh, cool.
That I worked on for like 8 months last year. And so I'm just really thankful. It's been really fun, and it speaks to all of my interest and my creative talents.
I mean, yeah, it's taking a little bit of everything. But how cool is that to be able to take those? Oh my
God, so fortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, again, full circle of just the thing of, I never knew that this would be where I was at, you know. I think I listened to a few podcasts when I was in college, but they were not what they are now.
Right.
Like storytelling and conversation and pop culture and all of those things. Like I was listening to This American Life, and that was like kind of all there was out there. And now that it's become so accessible that you can podcast from home, you don't have to go to a studio, as evidenced here. You can start with your own equipment, is really incredible. And now there's all these different networks. So, you know, Black History for Real is at Wondery, but my show with Delon, Let Me Fix It, was with Acast. So cool. We have these creative partners who help us with advertising and all these different things. Like, you kind of get to have your own business in that way, which is really neat. And again, not what I expected that I would be doing, but I'm very thankful.
And the cool thing is it can just keep growing. Those podcasts themselves, but all of these other opportunities outside of that as well.
Oh yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, you just never know where your work is how it's gonna reach people. I mean, this is a perfect example. Like I didn't know that you would stumble upon a video, and then, you know,
I spend a lot of time on your channels.
No, it's really awesome. I mean, the internet has opened so many doors for me. It's introduced me to so many people. It's helped me get jobs. It's helped me build friendships. And yeah, I'm excited to just see what's next. And I think I'm so type A, and I love control. But I think that's also just partly because I have a lack of control in my career, and there's just like no way to know what's coming next. So in that respect, like, it's given me a sense of freedom that I'm like, this is not what I thought I'd be doing, but I'm making it work. So you know what? I'll keep doing that. Like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 6 months, but I'll figure it out.
100%.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of other iterations or next steps that sound super fun that you haven't tried yet?
I mean, I would love for, I mean, one of the big reasons I was excited about working with Wondery is a lot of their podcasts have become television shows. Like Dear John was one that became a TV show. And so I would love it if Black History for Real became a television show at some point. That would be awesome.
I mean, it totally could be.
Yeah, it totally could be. And then like in the home decor space, I'm like developing a TV show around like home renovation stuff or apartment renovation stuff. But I would also really love to do like products. A lot of people have been like, you need to do wallpaper. And
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
like, okay, maybe I should. So again, not something that I thought about, but it came out of just like this viral moment, but then my audience responding and saying like, I would love this. Like, how do I get my home to look like this? So I'm exploring that. And it's great because I have a background in graphic design. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I could definitely design some houseware stuff.
Easily,
So
yeah.
I'm looking at that and maybe like launching a course in social media since a lot of people have asked for it. And I feel like, again, I love like doing all this research and trying to learn how to optimize and like what's working, what's not. And so the opportunity to help people who are launching a business or have a product or are trying to create content for themselves, like offering skills and helping them kind of format their content in that way would be really fun. So it's been something I've been talking about. I'm so overwhelmed with work.
You have a couple things that you're doing.
When do I do all these things?
For sure.
Yeah. So it's something that's like on my list for this year. But yeah, I'm slowly chipping away at all these different ideas.
I can't wait to see all the things that you come up with.
Oh, thank you.
As we kind of close things out, do you have any encouragement for other creatives who are looking to get into all of these spaces that you're in?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I say so often is just to remember that what's for you is for you. I think one of the downsides of social media is that you can see what everybody is doing and you see everybody's highlight reel, and it's really easy to compare yourself to other folks and say like, she's doing this or he's achieved that or they have this much money or da 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 da. And I think on the one hand, when you feel that twinge of jealousy, it can be a really great way to let you know like, oh, this is something maybe it's really important to me and I want to follow that creative passion. That's what I really want to be doing. It can also make you feel inadequate and it's just not fair to yourself. You have no idea what it took for somebody to get somewhere, positive or negative. You don't know that her parents gave her a loan of $100,000. You also don't know that this person lost a family member and that's how they got the money to invest in their business. Or you don't know how many people said no before they got that awesome opportunity that you're now seeing and you're thinking, why didn't I do that, you know? And so just remembering that, you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to take you however long it's going to take you to get somewhere, and that remembering the why and focusing on what it is that you're excited about and like what your dream is versus like the destination is the thing that's going to keep fueling you, because it might take a few years. And if you're thinking about that destination and not like the why, you're going to burn out. Everything's not going to go viral. Everything's not going to make a ton of money. Everything's not going to be a hit. But if you like what you're doing and you feel good about it, then you already won. So what's for you is for you.
I love that. It's an important reminder, I think, for everyone.
And I say that as somebody that has to tell herself that all the time.
Absolutely. I hear you.
It's easy to say to other people, but like I've had to like really believe that for myself, because it's hard, especially if you are a creative person and you're surrounded by other creative people that are also very talented and driven, and you see all your friends pop off. It's hard to be like, God, when is my moment? What's going on? But like just knowing, you know what, when it's supposed to be me, it'll be me, or it's something else that I don't even know I'm supposed to be doing and it just hasn't happened yet.
The things that might be for us could be even bigger and better than the things that we're currently wanting. But if we only live in this and don't keep trying and keep going forward, we may never know what our potential is.
It's so true.
Francesca, you are an inspiration. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was really wonderful.
So fun. Can you just say all of the places that people can find you?
Oh, yes. You can find me on Instagram, Cheska Lee, CHESCALEIGH. It's Franchesca and Lee, which is my middle name. And then I'm Franchesca Lee on TikTok, or you could just go to my website, francesca.net, FRANCHESCA.net.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a wrap.